Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, Notorious Tagger is now charging to remove graffiti in Seattle. Do we have to pay for that? But before we get to any of that, my friends, this insanity with the Democrats has not stopped. When your enemies are making mistakes, do not interrupt them, and the Democrats are making tons of mistakes right now. They have a huge PR problem, and whoever are their political consultants, I've said this how many times now, should be fired. Let's take a realistic look at the economy right now. Every single expert is looking at the economy right now and cautioning that a slowdown is on the way for many different reasons. I will note a caveat that most of these same experts were the ones who refused to declare it a recession during Joe Biden's time because that would have been the end of the Democrats and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and anything else. We fit every single criteria for a recession while Joe Biden was in office, but they didn't want to call it as such. So now they're using the term slowdown, and they're not wrong. The economy is kind of treading water right now, especially the stock market, while they wait to see what happens with the tariffs. They should be banging on that. That's what the Democrats should be doing. Donald Trump promised day one he was going to get all these deals, and it's not happening. They'll have egg on their face later, but they should give that a go now. At least that's what they could do. Now, regarding Kilmar Abreu Garcia, they are blowing this big time. They could have made the argument about, well, he is terrible, he is awful, he is horrible, he's a gang member, but in this country, we believe everybody is innocent until proven guilty. We believe everybody gets their day in court, and they didn't do that. Instead, it was Maryland father. Then it was Maryland man. Oh, he's such a family man. It could be any one of you. Yeah, the guy's an MS-13 gang member who abused his wife, was involved in human trafficking, was involved in drug selling. You name it. This guy has a rap sheet that's a mile long. What the Democrats should have done, stood on the steps perhaps of the Supreme Court and said the Supreme Court has ruled for this guy to come back. And as horrible as he is, everybody deserves their day in court. Would have been a way to go. I'm not sure it would have worked so effectively, but they wouldn't have looked this stupid, and they would have had a message that resonated with the American public, which would have been, if they can do this to him, they can do it to any one of you. Now, I'm still not sure that would have been so effective, because what would have happened is I would have said, hey, I'm fine. I'm not a gang member. I got nothing to worry about. I don't have gang tattoos on my hand that spell out MS-13 in the symbols for them. So let's be real about this for a second. The Democrats are trying to make something out of this, and it just ain't working. Now, the worst offender is Senator Chris Van Hollen, who nobody knew who he was until 5 minutes ago. Chris Van Hollen went down to El Salvador, met with this guy, and there's a picture of them where it's zoomed in real close, so you see the water they're having, and you don't notice later they're having the margaritas in front of them. Now, Chris Van Hollen, when he got back today, just a little while ago, held a press conference. He brings up the battered spouse, Jennifer, of Kilmar Abreu Garcia, the MS-13 gang member, and he spends more time talking about margaritas than he has ever spent talking about the victims of illegal aliens and their crimes, like Rachel Morin, who was killed by an illegal immigrant in his district. Give a listen.
About what I would call Margarita Gate. I don't know if you guys have been following this, but President Bukele, after I met with Kilmar, did this tweet showing us at a table with these two glasses. So here's what happened. When I first sat down with Kilmar, we just had glasses of water on the table. I think maybe some coffee. And as we were talking, one of the government people came over and deposited 2 other glasses on the table with ice, and I don't know if it was salt or sugar around the top, but they looked like margaritas. And if you look at the one they put in front of Kilmar, it actually had a little less liquid than the one in front of me, to try to make it look, I assume, like he drank out of it. Let me just be very clear. Neither of us touched the drinks that were in front of us. And if you want to play a little Sherlock Holmes, I'll tell you how you can know that. So if you look at the video or the picture I sent out from the beginning of our meeting, you'll see there are no...
Enough. I can't. He has now spent 90 seconds talking about margaritas. 90 seconds. That is 90 seconds more than he has ever spoken about Rachel Morin, who was a Maryland mom, a Maryland woman, would have been a Maryland grandmother if she hadn't been killed by illegal immigrants. But Chris Van Hollen has never mentioned that. He's never mentioned any of the crime committed by illegal immigrants in his district at all. In fact, Rachel Morin's mom, Patty Morin, actually went on Fox News and called him out for this.
There's been more than one murder here in Harford County. There was Kaylee Hamilton in 2023 or 2022. It was my daughter back in 2023. And at the time, they knew that they were immigrants that were in this country illegally, so they broke federal law. They committed crimes, violent crimes. They broke state law. And yet there was no outcry, or anger that these crimes were being committed against these women and children. And now I have a senator who's in El Salvador who is loudly advocating for another immigrant who's in the country illegally, has broken federal law by doing that, has beaten his wife, violence, has broken state law by doing that, and yet his actions are he's advocating for this man. And he's saying, well, he's a dad. He's been a good guy. He's been here. There are a lot of fathers that are in jail. The point is, they keep saying, rule of law. But by him going down there, he's advocating for this person that has actually broken the law that he claims to be upholding by advocating for someone who has broken federal law and state law. And his silence towards my daughter and towards Kaylee shows that he has no, where his values are, that he would rather value the criminal than the victim. Mm-hmm. And I don't want my taxpayer money to go to that. I don't want my taxpayer money to pay for a senator who is willing to advocate for someone who has knowingly committed crimes and not advocate for my daughter who is a victim of a crime, a violent and brutal one.
Exactly right. Exactly right. By the way, we'll know in his next filing period, they have to do that, I believe, monthly. We will find out if he spent his own money on this trip, if he spent taxpayer money on this trip. It may take 2, because if he used credit cards to book flights and stuff, it may take a little while. But we will find out whose money he used to go visit that gang member. Meanwhile, the Democrats are so dumb. They have these terrible optics of a senator nobody heard of until 5 minutes ago who's just trying to get his name in lights, who then decides to advocate for a wife-beating, human-trafficking, drug-dealing gang member, and they all hop on board with that narrative, rather than the one I laid out at the beginning of the show, where they could just say, everybody deserves their day in court, even somebody as bad as this, we don't agree with him, but if they can do it to him, they can do it to you. They didn't go that route. Instead, it's the Maryland father. So Ken Martin, who's the chair of the Democrat Party, shared this picture of Senator Chris Van Hollen sitting with Abreu Garcia. Chris Van Hollen wrote in this thing, and he said, I said my main goal of this trip was to meet with Kilmar. Tonight I had that chance. I have called his wife, Jennifer, to pass along his message of love. You mean the wife that he beat the hell out of? I look forward to providing a full update upon my return. So, Ken Martin, the chair of the Democrats, shared this. And you wonder why they have a 21% approval rating when he writes, thank you, Senator. Thank you for meeting with the wife-beating gang member. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. David Hogg, vice chair of the Democrat Party, of the DNC. This also explains why they have a 21% approval rating. David Hogg, the kid who is only famous because he was in a school where there was a shooting and has made it his mission to speak out against gun violence, as he calls it, accomplished nothing whatsoever, and somehow managed to get into Harvard with lower grades than other people, is now graduate of Harvard and has accomplished nothing there, and is now somehow the vice chair of the DNC. So your whole thing is you're against gun violence, but you're for the gang member? The MS-13 gang member. Just making sure I understand that. He shares this post, and he says, this is exactly what we need more of. We have to show people we are fighting back, and we are here to protect American people from Trump's reckless agenda. And you wonder why they have a 21% approval rating. Because most people will go, his reckless agenda got rid of the gang member, David. Cory Booker, Spartacus himself, says, we must stand firm against Trump's disregard for the rule of law. Cory, hang on. Cory, Bubby, I just have a question. How'd this guy get into the country? Oh, right. The disregard of the rule of law. He says, thank you, Chris, for your leadership, for taking a stand for Kilmar and for all of us. So we should take a stand for the wife-beating gang members who human traffic people into this country, thereby having a disregard for the rule of law. Also, Spartacus, spare me, really. How many times have you called for violence? I love his tweet right here where he's getting ratioed with his own comments. We have to take to the streets. We have to speak out against Trump. We have to call all the violent tweets that this guy has. He's getting ratioed hard with them. Then comes Hillary Clinton.
Now, that's a name I've not heard in a long time. A long time.
Now, before we discuss Hillary Clinton, I just want to say, Mike, make sure we have this recorded. I'm very happy with my life. I have no suicidal thoughts. I have no information that could lead to the arrest of Hillary Clinton. None whatsoever. What I am saying is just quoting her own tweet. Please don't have me offed. Hillary Clinton wrote, thank you, Senator Van Hollen, for standing up not just for Kilmar Abreu Garcia, but for every American who believes in due process. We can't stop speaking out until he's home. And he is home. He's from El Salvador. He's a criminal from El Salvador. He is home. Until this administration stops its horrific practice of kidnapping people without charge or trial. Abreu Garcia had due process, not once, not twice, but thrice, as a matter of fact. And what the hell are you talking about? By the way, she knew she was wrong when she put this thing out there, and she doesn't want to hear any negativity. So she closed comments as soon as she tweeted it, so you can't comment on her dumb post. I love how these Democrats are all on board for advocating for the illegal immigrant, but not for, the illegal immigrant gang member, wife beater, human trafficker, drug dealer, but not for Ian Alexander, the kid from New Jersey, who's been a hostage of Hamas for over 18 months. So they're advocating to bring the gang member back to the United States, but not Idan Alexander? Yeah, that makes perfect sense. By the way, the media is complicit with this nonsense. What do I mean? Donald Trump today was speaking and was laying out exactly what Abreu Garcia had done. And MSNBC, they're so afraid of the truth, they cut away. They cut away from the president of the United States while he is saying all this, because they don't want that narrative to get out to their audience. Because as soon as their audience hears it, they may go, why are they defending a gang member?
In 2019, Garcia was issued a deportation order. Two separate judges affirmed Garcia was a member of MS-13, which is a gang that may be even worse.
We've been watching President Donald Trump there swearing in the new administrator of the CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, Dr. Mehmet Oz, during this conversation.
Okay, as a radio person, as a media person, I could tell you what she was doing there. Did you hear how she was stretching out her words? She is searching for the next thing to say or the next story to do because somebody in her little earpiece said, cut away, quick, get it off, get rid of it, get rid of all of it. That's what's going on right there because he's about to make the case of why this guy should not be in the U.S. and belongs in an El Salvadoran prison. Yeah. This is the media helping out the Democrats. Because, look, I've had people contact me. I've had a bunch of people contact me where they have a difference of opinion on Abreu Garcia. And every single time, I give them link after link after link after link. Either they don't reply to me, which means they were just out for the trolling, or alternatively, and these people who email me, by the way, these are people who have to look at my email address and then send me an email, or these are people who really want to have the conversation. Anybody who really wants to have the conversation will eventually say, yeah, okay, I agree with you on this guy, but what about due process? And then we get into the due process conversation, and you know what? There is a case to be made there. There is a case to be made. I will say he had due process 3 times. Somebody else might say, yeah, but for this one, he needed it again. And then you could say, fine, let's bring him back and bring him to Guantanamo Bay, give him a terror trial because MS-13 is a gang that has been marked as a terrorist organization, and then send him back, and he still won't be on U.S. soil ever again. You want to say that? At least you have an argument there. And I hear the argument for due process. But the entire left saying we're advocating for the gang member makes no sense at all and is costing them at the polls. Plus, they're so disingenuous. So Kilmar Abreu Garcia's wife was being interviewed by Michael Stranahan. What's he on? Good Morning America? Yeah, I think that's what he's on. Listen to how the media is covering for them.
I have to ask it. You did take out a temporary order of protection against your husband in 2021. Were you in fear of your husband?
1,000. 1,000.
My husband is alive. That's all I can say.
Okay. And I'm not going to push on that, apparently. But how much hope?
Hang on. I'm not going to push on that. Mike, if somebody did that on our show, I would say, thank you. But... okay, so this is what they teach you in improv class, says the former theater kid. Somebody says something like that, you say, thank you, but can you expand on? Michael Stranahan, nope, not going to push on that. I did my due diligence. I brought up that she was abused by this guy. Check the box. Now Ari Hoffman and the rest of the conservative alt-right media can't come down on me. No, dude, you didn't do your job. You covered for her. You covered for him. Absolutely not. You guys are covering and helping the Democrats because you picked the wrong poster child. And you could be making the case for due process. You could say, if you believe he is so guilty, bring him back, give him a trial, he'll be found guilty, or we'll have a hearing again and kick him out of here. By the way, you know what we could do instead? I got an idea. Let's send down a judge and a couple of lawyers to El Salvador. Let's take them all out for margaritas and water and coffee or whatever else this senator says was out on his table, Chris Van Hollen, and then have the hearing right there. They do it in hospitals. They do it at Gitmo. They do it in other places. Go do it there. And then we'll be done. That's his day in court, even though he already had 3 other ones. When your enemies are making mistakes, don't interrupt them. When Democrats are making mistakes, don't interrupt them. Just keep calling them out, because if you have this conversation rationally with anybody, they will eventually come to but due process. Okay, then let's have the due process conversation. But you realize your side is defending the MS-13 gang member who beat his wife, who trafficked people, and who dealt drugs. That's the horse you want to back? Well, as they say, that's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it pays off for them. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. When we come back, a notorious Seattle tagger is now charging people to remove graffiti. Does that mean our tax dollars are paying for this? We'll give you the details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. I saw an article on Como News that sent me into the atmosphere today. So, according to Como News, Casey Kane, otherwise known as Eager. You might know him from seeing the word Eager spray painted all over Seattle. He's a prolific tagger. This guy has caused hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage, if not millions of dollars in damage, to our fair city. This guy, who's 38 years old, has faced multiple felony charges over the last few years. And don't forget, Ann Davidson has now and the city of Seattle are now allegedly going after tagging around Seattle. They made a whole big deal about that. We're going to arrest all these people. We're going to charge all these people. I assume he was at the top of the list. But somehow this guy is out of jail and now cleans up graffiti. So some of you might say, well, that's fitting. He can clean up all the damage he did. Do you think he's doing it for free? That's my problem. You want to say your punishment is to clean up all the graffiti as far as the eye can see? I would 100% agree with you. Let the punishment fit the crime. Instead, him and another graffiti tagger named Jay Volkman have a new business called The Buff Man, where they will show up and remove your graffiti. My question is, how much money has the city of Seattle spent on The Buff Man? Which means that over the weekend, I will be doing a public disclosure request to find out exactly how much money the city of Seattle has spent on The Buff Man. Now, they try to paint him as sympathetic.
I see what you did there, by the way.
Thank you.
All right. Paint him.
Paint him. You saw that. I knew it's like, yes, that pun was intended. They tried to paint him as sympathetic. But at the same time, they talk about how he was in a coma from some accident. And I went and looked up the accident. Now, I'm not sure if this is the accident in question or he fell off a height while vandalizing some building, but apparently he was in a coma from an accident. Hang on a second here. Let me go back to 2023.
Yeah, wait a dang minute. Is this guy Duke in G.I. Joe the movie? It's like, he's gone into a coma.
Oh, no. Is that guy? Right. No, not that. I found this article that I wrote for the Post Millennial back in 2023. Headline from July 27th, improvised explosive devices used to bomb tent full of homeless drug addicts and ongoing turf war near Seattle hospital. The explosion was a targeted attack on a fentanyl tent where 20 customers were inside using drugs. Do you remember this story? Mike and I were covering parts of this live. What happened? There was an explosion on the side of I-5, followed by multiple other explosions, and it was right near the hospitals, right over there that you could see from the freeway. And what's going on is it turns out this was a gang turf war where they were targeting each other with IEDs.
This is the one with the propane tanks, right?
With the propane tanks, yes.
Wow.
So this is that one. So they had the IEDs, and then they had the IEDs hooked up to propane tanks, and then they had the propane tanks in the homeless encampment that were catching fire because of the massive fire, and they're exploding. We were covering this whole thing live. I remember it like it was yesterday.
This is a real Back to the Future 2 situation there. It's like, turns out the notorious tagger Eager was there the whole time. That wasn't even a part of the story we were covering when we did it a couple years ago.
Well, so here's the thing. I scrolled down in my article, and I found about 3/4 of the way down, he is mentioned. Here we go. This was actually from Jeremy Harris at Como News because he was the one who found this, and I included it in the article. He says, I've confirmed Casey Kane, prolific tagging suspect, was injured in the explosion. He's in the ICU in serious conditions. Court records say Kane lived in this encampment. He was recently released from jail to await charges of causing over $200,000 in damage with graffiti. So, do you agree with me that if he's doing it as community service or part of his sentencing, that's fine? But if he's doing it for City of Seattle and our tax dollars, when we have a $290 million budget deficit, should not be going to the guy who caused hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in damage? Now, actually, I believe that our friend Phil Vandervoort from The Morning Ride interviewed his partner this morning. Zach told me he was going to be putting it up at KVI.com. So if you want to hear how Phil grilled the tagging suspect, then you can go check that out over at KVI.com. That's KVI.com. I want to know if you agree with me or disagree with me that we should not be paying for this. That if the punishment fits the crime and he spends the rest of his life cleaning up graffiti, we'll call it good. But you give us a call and let us know. 206-421-5757 or text us at 206-421-5757. When we come back, the RFK documents are revealed. What was actually in them? At the same time, RFK Jr. reveals his plan to figure out what's causing autism. Is there anything to this, or is this crazy mad scientist stuff? We'll give you the details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. All right, before we go to the swamp, I got to read this text. So we're talking about the prolific tagger who wound up in a coma in the last segment. And Matt texted in. He goes, the little-known Morrissey song, Tagger in a Coma. Yes, you get the rim shot and the shout-out for that one. Exactly right. Oh, we do love our callers and texters. You can call or text us at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. I need to fire up the DeLorean today because I didn't realize it is a very, very significant anniversary today. I want to take you back in time 4 years ago to today, when Fauci stood at the White House and told us what caused the coronavirus. You ready for this one? Here we go.
Group of highly qualified evolutionary virologists looked at the sequences there and the sequences in bats as they evolve, and the mutations that it took to get to the point where it is now is totally consistent with a jump of a species from an animal to a human. So, I mean, the paper will be available. I don't have the authors right now, but we can make that available too.
Do you know what he was doing at the time when he mentioned the bat nonsense? He was contradicting President Trump, who was saying it leaked from a lab in China. By the way, if you go to the old COVID website, the U.S. government, the Trump administration, has now replaced all the nonsense that was up there from the Biden administration with all the stuff about the COVID lab leak from the Wuhan virology lab in Wuhan, China. You mean the ones that were studying respiratory viruses that somehow leaked from there? Oh. You know what really ticked me off during COVID that ticked many of us off? We're following the science. No, you're not. If you say we can't be in groups for funerals, for weddings, for bar mitzvahs, to go to synagogue, to go to church, to go to anything else, but you can riot in the streets with tens of thousands of people. You can march for social justice because racism is a pandemic. Our own scientists here in Washington were telling us the vaccine is not effective at stopping the spread of the virus. And what happened? You had Jay Inslee and crew. You have to do it because it stops the spread. You don't want to be a bioreactor hazard generating facility like Donald Trump supporters. Do you remember that nonsense? You know what I like about RFK Jr.? RFK Jr. is really good at actually following the science. I may not always agree with him and things that he says, but he has changed his views over time, following evidence on the ground. You want the easiest example? Here we go. His father was killed by a Palestinian activist called Sirhan in the Ambassador Hotel on the night where he clinched the California primary when he was running for president. There have been many conspiracy theories about RFK Jr.'s assassination. And RFK Jr. has said that in the past he wasn't fully convinced that Sirhan actually did it. He went to meet with Sirhan to hear what he had to say. And he has said, yes, well, I thought this, but you know what? He actually did it. Well, today, Tulsi Gabbard released all the documents that the federal government has that we know of regarding RFK Jr.'s assassination. And you know what it says? Yeah, he did it. There's been no big reveals from these documents that anybody has found yet, except for one little document where Sirhan, in his defense, is claiming, I was framed. Well, then show me the proof for you being framed. It's like that scene in Shawshank, how nobody's guilty in the prison. Oh, you mean the assassin didn't want to say he was guilty and said he was framed? There's nothing really fun in these. RFK Jr. has had some very strong feelings regarding what is going on with vaccines, regarding what is going on with autism. He gave a very, very long, in-depth analysis of how, or rather breakdown, of how he's going to study the autism thing when he was on Sean Hannity's show last night. Now, for me, it's a little difficult to listen to RFK Jr., but I will make the following points on his behalf, which is the ones he made last night. He said, you don't know a lot of adults who have autism. And maybe you want to say, hey, you know what? A lot of people in his generation, I should say. And you know what? You want to say, well, they weren't good at diagnosing it. Well, then people around here, we would diagnose them later in life if that was the case. He said that it used to be 1 in 10,000 people used to have autism. And over the last few years, it went from 1 in 36 children to now 1 in 32 children. Clearly, something is wrong. Clearly, there's a problem. Well, we should study it, don't you think? Follow the science. Where's all the follow the science people? Instead, they just say, oh, he's a crazy old coot. Well, actually, he said something really fascinating on the show last night. These 45 seconds here. Give a listen.
President Trump asked me to find out what's causing it. And I'm approaching that agnostically. We are looking at everything we're going to do. We're going to be very transparent in how we design the studies. We're going to farm the studies out to 15 premier research groups from all over the country. And we're going to be transparent about our protocols, about the data sets, and then every study will have to be replicated. We're going to look at mold. We're going to look at the age of parents. We're going to look at food and food additives. We're going to look at pesticides and toxic exposures. We're going to look at medicines. We're going to look at vaccines. We're going to look at everything.
We're going to look at everything. I have a lot more respect for that than anything Anthony Fauci ever said, not just because hindsight's 20/20 on everything Fauci said, and that everything he said was wrong and contradicted himself constantly. But what's wrong with doing this research? Nobody's been able to tell me that yet. If the data is out there, then you know what? You guys can pick it apart afterwards and say whether you agree with it, whether you disagree with it. That's what science was all about. But in the Biden administration, in the Fauci years, you were not allowed to dissent. We had Robert Malone, the doctor who created the mRNA vaccine, on this show to talk about the mRNA vaccine, and YouTube pulled down the interview. Facebook pulled down the interview. I think it only exists now on Rumble. So the guy who was part of the team that designed the mRNA vaccine, his opinion isn't valid? Whenever we talked about the vaccine, we would get dinged on social media. And we did it a lot. Whenever we would bring up those papers, so many people say to me all the time, Ari, how did I not see all this stuff about Washington knowing the vaccine wasn't stopping the spread? I said, because they were throttling it on social media. I said on my radio show, why weren't you listening then? We covered this stuff in depth. Science is about replicating or failing to replicate studies that have been done before, proving new theories. Science is always evolving. Science is always growing. So what's wrong with looking at this and going, we have a real problem here when autism went from 1 in 10,000 to now 1 in 32? There's an issue. What's causing it? We don't use lead paint anymore. We don't build buildings with asbestos anymore. 4 out of 5 doctors don't recommend smoking anymore. Maybe we should just take a look at this and figure it out. What sacred cow are you protecting? And for all we know, it's the simplest thing. Who would have thought about the lead-based paint? Who would have thought about the asbestos? It's protecting you from fires. That makes sense. Build the building with the thing protecting you from fires. Oh, you mean breathing it in is going to cause cancer? What's wrong with following the science and actually following the science? You got an objection to that, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, local pride parades are in trouble, but it's trouble of their own making. We'll tell you what's going on when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. I can't believe how fast April is flying by. It looks like the weather's changing a little bit. Today was a lovely day while we were out walking to the Fraser prop exhibit out at the Seattle Armory. We'll have more on that later in the show. But that means the holy month of June is almost here. That's right, Pride Month is almost here. Well, now brewing company Anheuser-Busch is pulled its support from the St. Louis Pride Fest after 30 years of supporting it. And don't forget, that's where their headquarters is. Nonprofit Pride St. Louis announced the company's move on Tuesday, with the organization president saying that Anheuser-Busch has been a key supporter of the event for 30 years. Gee, why do you think Anheuser-Busch would not be supporting the Pride Parade this year? Do you think maybe it had to do with a certain marketing campaign last year? Just a hunch. Just a hunch. That's my guess. That's right. Go woke, go broke. Well, now locally, there is a Pride Festival, which seems to be suffering from its own stupidity. So Seattle Pride is now asking for community donations to help cover a $350,000 budget shortfall caused by a loss of corporate sponsorships. Now, they are blaming DEI rollbacks. They are blaming Donald Trump. They are blaming everyone but themselves. You know, I'm old enough to remember when Seattle Pride rejected $11,000 of Amazon money, and Amazon's one of the wokest corporations on the planet. I'm old enough to remember when Seattle Pride rejected the Seattle Police Department and alienated a whole bunch of their supporters that way, including gay cops. I'm old enough to remember that Seattle Pride was being led by that Marxist, Crystal Marx. Yeah, that's actually her last name. And she was rejecting anybody she didn't deem worthy enough as a sponsor. And you want to know why you have a $350,000 hole in your budget. Self-inflicted wounds, my friends. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line. Take a call from Paul in Bonnie Lake. Paul, what's going on?
Thank you for taking my call, Aaron. We have always had autism. Always. But today we live longer and better. We have antibiotics. We have HVAC. We have surgical techniques. We have a wide variety of drugs and medication. We live longer and better for the abnormality to manifest itself. 100 years ago, 150 years ago, maybe these children lived all their life in the family farm. Maybe they died early. Maybe they went into an institution, and maybe they rose to positions of power and greatness. Highly intelligent. They're very focused. We've always had it. But as life becomes better, abnormalities manifest themselves. I have two in my family that are related, tetralogy of Fallot and Down syndrome. Yes, there's a tie between the two. But my uncle lived into his 60s. My sister, unfortunately, died at about 5 months of age. But we live longer and better.
So, Paul, let me ask you this, and I appreciate you sharing that personal information with us, and then I got to run after I ask you this question. We're coming up on a hard break, but let me ask you this. If we find that out, wouldn't that be better so everybody stops assuming it's something else?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm telling people this. And, Aaron, listen to me. Just give me a second.
You got 10.
Have you ever seen an iron lung?
Yes.
Oh, have you ever known anybody who was in one?
No, because we have the polio vaccine.
Correct.
Yes.
Smallpox, gone.
Okay.
Yellow fever, gone.
Yes, but if the government had been in charge of finding a vaccine for polio, we'd have the best iron lung machine in the world. Paul, I appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. When we come back, my friends, your chance to be part of the Golden Age of America giveaway and win over $2,000. Plus, we're going to talk about Bob Ferguson's latest insanity. I think he's daring the Trump administration. We'll give you the details. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour is Bob Ferguson daring the Trump administration to mess with Washington. But before we get to any of that, my friends, it is time for you to be part of the golden age of America.
The golden age of America begins right now.
Yeah, it does. It is your chance to win $2,025 and a $50 Daniel's Broiler gift card. Now, all you have to do, my friends, is I'm going to give you a word, and you text just the word, not your name. Not your phone number, not your address. We've been doing this for some time now, my friends. Do not text doubles. Do not text multiple times. Just the word to the number I give you. That is all. And you will be entered to be part of the golden age of America.
And I'm asking every citizen all across our land to join me in launching a new golden age for America.
And I'm asking every citizen across our fair city and our fair land to be part of this contest. Now, all you have to do is text the word dub, D-U-B, as in I dub that off an album, right? Dub, D-U-B, to 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. You have until 5 o'clock to text the word dub, D-U-B, to 206-421-5757. If you miss your chance, your next chance isn't until Monday at 8 a.m. during the morning ride with Philip Vandervoort. Now, check out danielsbroiler.com to reserve a table, place your takeout delivery order, and more. And I want to thank President Trump, with such a busy schedule he had today, for joining us for the Golden Age of America contest.
Well, and thank you, Ari. You do an incredible job and such an important voice. Thank you very much, Ari.
Well, that's so kind of you to say, Mr. President. Really do appreciate that. Well, now, my friends, time to talk about Bob Ferguson, and a story you're not going to get anywhere else.
Talk Radio 570 KVI, an Ari Hoffman Show exclusive.
Let's start with this for a second. We know that Bob Ferguson is very in with the Council on American Islamic Relations. They pay for his campaigns. He's done legal things for them before, like trying to stop the so-called Muslim ban, which wasn't a Muslim ban. In fact, all it was keeping terrorists out of the United States. Bob Ferguson has been honored by the Council for American Islamic Relations, which was an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation trial, which was the largest terror trial in U.S. history, which involved giving money to Hamas from a U.S. nonprofit. CARE was an unindicted co-conspirator. CARE has been called a branch of Hamas in America. So here's something weird. On April 9th, Bob Ferguson signed this bill about 2 Muslim holidays that he was signing to be officially recognized. And I called him out, as did many others, and say, you're on the eve of Passover, and you're talking about 2 Muslim holidays? Okay, whatever. Now, the way social media works, if you're good at it, the way social media works, if you track my pages, for example, is I will typically post a hot story at night, and then maybe repost it in the morning for more views. I do that with our podcast, for example. Mike shares them at night. I share them in the morning. This is the kind of stuff you do for more views. Sometimes heading into the weekend, when less people are looking at social media because they're out enjoying time with their family or whatever else, you may go back to the well if you have nothing else to post. Did they have nothing else to post on the Good Friday that we are having today? Did they have nothing else to post on the eve of another set of days of Passover? Did they have nothing else to post on the eve of Easter? He went back to the well and reposted this, but he didn't just he reshared it, talking about how historic it is to recognize these holidays. What? Has CARE said, hey, forget about those Jewish and Christian holidays? You got to share our Muslim holidays? It's a really weird thing to do on the eve of not just another set of Jewish holidays, but a Christian holiday. Very odd thing to do. But the oddest thing that Bob Ferguson did was an announcement he made yesterday. Now, I want you to listen to this video, and I want you to tell me what you notice, because I saw it right away. I saw two things right away. One, what he's advertising, but two, is I think Bob Ferguson is daring the Trump administration to come after him. This is an announcement he made on social media this week.
Ferguson, your governor, and first I want to start this message by thanking each and every one of you for your very hard work during some challenging times that we're going through as a state. And the purpose of this video is to share information about the 2025 Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Empowerment Conference for all Washington State employees. So this is a save the date message to all of you to save the dates of June 4th and 5th and June 11th and 12th. The theme for this year's conference is embedding meaningful access and inclusion in everything. And I think it's fair to say it is more important than ever to reaffirm our commitment as a state to these principles. These values improve our government, make us more responsive to the people, and ensure that we consider the impacts of policies and decisions on every Washingtonian, not just those who can access government or afford lobbyists. Registration starts on May 1st, so that's coming up soon. The conference is virtual, and I encourage everyone to check out as many of the sessions as they can. Thanks again for all your hard work. I really appreciate it, and hope to see you at the conference.
So that was sent to Washington State employees. And I would like to thank the KVI listener that passed it along to me. So that is a conference for Washington State employees on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what is the theme of the conference this year? Embedding meaningful access and inclusion in everything, which means embedding DEI in everything. Remember when we used to go through those insane curriculums from Tracy Castro Gill, that lunatic who got fired from Seattle Public Schools DEI program, who was then selling these curriculums to other school districts across the country, whose mark had already been made in Seattle, where was math racist. Here's how you undo the racism. English racist. History racist. Music racist. Everything that she had a curriculum on was talking about how racist it was. Every single thing. What we said multiple times was that DEI is woven into the curriculum. It'll be in how they propose the math problems, how they discuss history, what they discuss. It was threaded into the entire curriculum. So if you want to say, I want to opt my kid out of these hypersexualized sex ed classes, if they still let you do it, you couldn't opt your kid out of English or history or math. You got to yank him out of the public schools entirely. But my question to you is, do you think that Bob Ferguson is doing this just to challenge Donald Trump? Because I think he is. This is a come get me. Because don't forget, Donald Trump signed the executive order banning DEI and has threatened to withhold federal funding. I wonder if Bob Ferguson is mad that so far all anybody is talking about is Maine and California with regard to this stuff, and nobody's talking about Washington. Now, they are investigating Washington for its sanctuary city, sanctuary state policies, and we'll discuss that more later in the show. But so far, they haven't mentioned the DEI stuff. I know that University of Washington is on the list of colleges that are being investigated for anti-Semitism, but the DEI stuff is kind of flown under the radar, and it is woven into everything around here. This is a conference for the staff. By the way, I took Bob up on his offer. I went to the website for this conference and started digging. Would you like to know what the sessions are at this thing? Sessions at the conference. Now, half of them haven't been announced yet because we're still a ways out from this thing. But those that were up there, they include psychological impacts of having our worldviews challenged. Mike, do you think I'm suffering psychologically? Do I look like a person who needs a psychological evaluation? As you know exactly which movie I'm quoting right there. That's from Under Siege when Yes. When Busey is in all the drag outfit, right? Busey is all in the drag outfit after pretending to be Miss July on the battleship. Do I look like I need a psychological evaluation? Okay.
Yes.
So, psychological impacts of having our worldviews challenged. What do I do on the show every single day? Every single day, my worldviews are challenged on social media or everything. Do I need to shrink for that? No, I think I'm okay for that. All right, other things, PTSD from the autonomous zone, maybe. Childhood trauma from parents' divorce, maybe. But for that, no. People said mean things about me. Oh, no. Oh, no. People said mean things about you. Embedding equity in the data life cycle. I don't know what that means. I really don't know what that means. Embedding equity in data? Data is data. Either it's real data or it's fake data. Why are you putting any of this stuff in? What does that mean? Strategies for inclusive and ethical data practices. What does that mean? Make sure the data favors one group over another group? Affordable housing access. Bob, don't use big words you can't understand. A cornerstone of equity work and the new political landscape and connections, digital inclusion in the workplace. So this is full-on DEI woven into literally everything. Supervisors were told to look for ways to adjust team schedules and workloads to allow each team member to attend at least one conference session, cancel or reschedule conflicting meetings. Supervisors were also urged to use your current communication tools to encourage employee attendance, plan agency-specific reflection sessions for team members to discuss their questions, key takeaways, aha moments from the conference sessions, register for several event sessions and share leaders' schedules for teams to model attendance and show their commitment to equity and learning. Do you know what last year's theme of this nonsense was? Because I went and looked that up too. Equity and belonging through disrupting policy and practice. So, this is literally in direct contrast to President Trump's recent executive order, which mandates the termination of DEI-related programs across federal agencies and institutions that rely on federal funding. The order included dismantling DEI, DEIA, which is for that accessibility stuff, and environmental justice efforts, while also mandating a review of employment practices, federal contracts, and performance metrics tied to diversity goals. Do you think this is just Bob Ferguson daring the president to come after him? Give us a call or a text and let me know. 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757 because I believe it is. I believe that's exactly what's happening right here. He is daring Donald Trump to come after him. He wants the fight. We know he wants the fight. This is also, Bob Ferguson is doing the meme. You know the meme where somebody's riding along on the bicycle, shoves a stick right there inside their wheel, and then they flip over? Bob Ferguson is shoving the stick in the wheel of the Washington budget. He's the one who's claiming, oh, we need more taxes. We're not going to get there just by making cuts. We need more taxes. Yeah, don't fall for what the Seattle media is doing, where they're claiming, oh, look how good Bob Ferguson is. Maybe he's a centrist. Maybe he's being better about all this stuff. No, my friends. No, not at all. This is a guy who in the same email he said he wasn't signing that massive budget proposal. He said, oh, hey, you know what I'm going to do? We need more progressive revenue. Progressive revenue means taxes. And that's what Bob Ferguson was saying he wants to do. So you say you have this massive budget gap, this huge budget gap. Well, who's the one who's causing the budget gap? Because you are jeopardizing federal funding with this nonsense, with this racist, discriminatory nonsense. Here we go. Let me ask a question. Jews are 0.1% of the world's population. Where do I factor in DEI? We're not listed anywhere, nor would I ever want to be listed in DEI anywhere. This is discriminatory. It's discriminatory against white people. It's discriminatory against Asians, discriminatory against Jews, and many other groups. It's just whoever the left deems worthy of having their protection, they're the ones who get Turd Ferguson's DEI protection. That's what they get. This is ludicrous, nonsense. And I think he's just doing it to dare the Trump administration. What do you think? Give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends, more UW visas are getting yanked. A lot more, as a matter of fact. Do we actually know what these people are doing? We'll give you the details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. The University of Washington has now confirmed that the total number of international students and recent graduates who had their visas canceled by the federal government is now up to 23. Now, that's just from UW. I wonder how many from the other schools in our state, which means I'm going to have to start checking in and keeping a closer eye on this. But now you're up to 23 just from University of Washington alone. Now, the Seattle Times is more than happy to defend these kids. But what I found fascinating is, hang on a second, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs down, you got to get through in their article talking about how awful Trump is and how terrible this administration is. You have to find out what they did. Now, they're not giving their names. But here's what we got. Misdemeanor driving conviction, driving under the influence, and suspicion of battery. So, they're not on the straight and narrow path. They have issues in their backgrounds. If you want to be here on a student visa, you don't get to break our rules. Now, mind you, I think there's more to it than that. I don't think it's just that they have these things in their backgrounds. I have a theory. Their lawyer is out there talking to multiple media outlets. Oh, the poor children. First of all, they're college kids. They're not children. Second of all, a lot of them are college graduates. They're not children. Third of all, a lot of them are grad students. They're not children. They're not giving out their names. Normally, what do they do in these cases? Bring me the person. Put them on film. I was just an innocent person here. I was just learning and I was just studying and I just want to learn and I just want to study. I just want to be a Husky. Why are they not putting them out there? Because odds are they're going to get the Abreu Garcia treatment. What does that mean? I don't mean being beaten up by Abreu Garcia like his wife was. That's not what I mean. That's not the treatment I meant. No. Mike's laughing. Thank you. I'll be here all week. So, what do I actually mean by that? What I mean by that is people like me are going to go to our footage of the Gaza encampment, and we're going to find these people and see if they were in the Gaza encampment. How much footage do I have from all that insanity? Tons. Better yet, I'm just going to send it over to Jonathan Cho. Cho is there basically every single day. I still had to do the radio show. Cho is in there all the time. Or you know what I'll do? I'll send it to the students on campus, and they'll be like, yep, know that guy, know that guy, know that guy, know that guy. That's the one who was blocking the Jewish students here. That's this one. They're not telling you any of that because what they're worried about is the internet will do the investigative reporting on them and then find out who they actually were, who they actually are, and what they were doing on campus. The Seattle Times continues their track record of, oh, the poor children. They're not children. Need I remind everybody, you graduate college when you are 22 years old. Grad school depends on what you are graduating in after that. So, also, you say you're old enough to get a sex change operation or anything else in the state. So then I think you're old enough to deal with the ramifications of your actions if you decided to discriminate against your fellow students and faculty members just because they were Jewish. Now, I noticed something else here. I haven't seen Nick Brown or Bob Ferguson take up the challenge on these yet. And I wonder if that's because they know who the names are. Now, I reached out to the Department of Homeland Security. And we got a response, by the way, from our friend, Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin, who we had on the show last week, and you can get that podcast over at kvi.com. And she said, it's a privilege to be granted a visa to live and study in the United States of America. When you break our laws and advocate for violence and terrorism, that privilege should be revoked, and you should not be in the country. She added, if a person's visa is revoked, I urge them to use the CBP Home app to self-deport. If you are in our country illegally, we will arrest, we will deport you, and you will never return. The safest option is self-deportation. Now, regarding what they can share regarding students and such, due to privacy concerns and visa confidentiality, the Department of Homeland Security generally does not comment on specific cases or actions taken under the ICE Homeland Security Investigation Student and Exchange Visitor Program. But the lawyers are out there not giving out the names and not giving you a face to go along with these. Normally, they give you a face. You think I'm right? You think I'm wrong? You give me a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Meanwhile, just some quick texts on our last segment. It seems like everybody believes that Bob Ferguson is definitely daring Donald Trump to take him on. This one here from the 425, it says, I worked with Bob. He is daring Trump. He loves to be seen. He thinks he is the smartest man. He wants to be president of the United States someday. So he wants to be seen on the national stage more. If we get federal cuts, that he can appease the Democrats into raising taxes. Yeah, he's right, because that's literally what he's saying in every single email he sends out. He's blaming Trump for our budget situation as opposed to out-of-control spending. When we come back, my friends, lots more to discuss. Speaking of illegal immigration, King County won't honor the detainers for Tren de Aragua gang members who allegedly tortured and tried to murder a local woman. We'll give you details when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, you have until 5 o'clock to text in that keyword. No, I'm not giving it to you again. You got to be listening at 4 o'clock during the Ari Hoffman Show. Your next chance to get a keyword is coming up at 8 a.m. on Monday during the morning ride with Phil Vandervoort. Don't forget, also coming up at 5:45, your chance to win fantabulous prizes during our Good News giveaway. This story has been the top of the news until it disappeared from the news. This was everywhere, and now it is gone. This is a story we told you about yesterday and the day before about how U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has confirmed that the two suspects accused of kidnapping, torturing, and attempting to kill a Washington state woman in January are illegal immigrants with alleged ties to the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, a designated foreign terrorist organization. Now, before I remind you of the story of what these guys did, I'm going to tell you we had a question yesterday because 2 out of the 3 of them were arrested and were in King County custody. And the question we reached out to King County with was, will you be honoring the ICE detainers that they filed? Now, Kevin Daniel Sanabria Ojeda, 24, and Alexander Moses Arnaz Gutierrez, both citizens of Venezuela, have been booked into King County Jail on charges of robbery, kidnapping, and attempted murder. The defendants have been accused of kidnapping a woman who's 58 outside of her apartment complex in Burien, Washington, a city, for those of you who don't live around here, located just south of Seattle, on January 21st. The victim was allegedly robbed and tortured before being driven to a mountain pass 90 miles away where she was shot and left for dead in the snow. This is according to King County charging documents, by the way. The victim miraculously survived the attempted murder. Now, we know what happened. They were looking for something. They drilled her hand with a power tool. That's what they did. And then they shot her thinking she was dead and threw her over the side into the snow, but turns out she was still alive. Now, ICE spokesperson David Yost reached out to us and told us that the agency has lodged 2 immigration detainers with the King County Jail in Seattle. He said that both suspects are citizens of Venezuela who have alleged ties to the notorious Tren de Aragua gang. So, he says that Kevin Sanabria Ojeda is a citizen of Venezuela previously arrested and released by the Seattle Police Department for domestic violence. When I reached out to the Seattle Police Department, they got back to me rather quickly, and they said, we don't give out details on domestic violence cases to protect the victims. Why was he why was he released? That's all I was asking for. I didn't ask for who, what, when, where, why, how. I just asked for why he was released. That's all I got, and they wouldn't give me the details. Alexander Arnaz Gutierrez is a citizen of Venezuela, previously convicted by Clark County District Court of DUI, received a sentence of 364 days in jail. When Arnaz failed to appear at immigration court, an immigration judge ordered him removed on June 5th, 2023. So how come he's still here? Oh, right. Who was in charge before that? Now, hang on a second. He's been ordered by an immigration judge to be removed. If this guy was deported tomorrow, would the left claim he didn't have due process because he didn't get the due process for drilling the woman's hand and everything else? Because I can imagine that happening. That's just like the other case, my friends. That's what we're talking about here. So if the Trump administration came in tomorrow and removed this guy and sent him to a Venezuelan prison, would we have Congress members and senators going down to visit him? Would they be talking about, oh, the poor gang member from Tren de Aragua? Court records show that Sanabria Ojeda and Arnaz Gutierrez obtained Washington state driver's licenses. You know what that means? They could be registered to vote. Additionally, authorities discovered a Social Security card belonging to Sanabria Ojeda during a search of his vehicle, as well as another Social Security card belonging to an individual identified as Charlie Manzo. It's unclear how he obtained the card without being a U.S. citizen. Now, they haven't caught the third guy in the case, but they do have these 2 guys in custody. So, here's what they did. On January 21st, 2025, the 58-year-old victim arrived at her apartment complex in Burien, Washington around 10 p.m., noticed 3 Hispanic males hanging out in the parking lot. 2 of them were standing near the entrance to her apartment, while another male was sitting in the driver's seat of the vehicle. As she walked to her apartment, the 2 men standing outside approached the victim and allegedly said they had been waiting for her. One of them had a gun, told the victim that he knew she lived alone and what time she would be home. They grabbed her, forced her into their vehicle. No one came to her rescue, even though she yelled and fought for help. One of the suspects shot her and missed. Then another one took out the drill after bashing her in the head several times, kicking her in the head several times, used the drill on her right hand to get the pin for her credit cards and bank numbers. So they did that, and then shot her through her body on the side of the road. So I reached out to King County and I said, are you going to honor the ICE detainers for the guys who did this? And King County said, how about no? They said under Washington state law and King County code, King County jails may not release a person to federal immigration authorities absent a criminal warrant issued by federal U.S. judge or magistrate judge, which means they're saying, don't blame us, blame the law, even though King County is the one that made the law, even though Washington's the one that made the law, even though Seattle's the one that made the law. Don't blame us, blame the law. Yeah, it hasn't always been there, guys. You put this into effect. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. A special extended version of Fake News Friday is coming up to put a smile on your face heading into the weekend, and we destroy sound transit. You're going to love it. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.
With Young Zach.
Educate yourself, you fool.
On the Ari Hoffman Show, Talk Radio 570 KVI.
Since we live in the most outrageous timeline, it's hard to tell the difference between the real and the fake news. That's why we have an expert like Young Zach with us from the morning show. Zach, what do you got for us today?
Yeah, talking about the craziest timeline. Apparently, Katy Perry's an astronaut.
I wouldn't say she actually went to space there, Bob.
If you had told me Katy Perry's going to be an astronaut and Russell Brand's going to be a sex offender, I'd believe most of that.
She is a space cadet, after all.
Well, a couple things to unpack there. First of all, isn't it the biggest surprise of all that Russell Brand isn't already a convicted sex pest? Because, like, we all just assumed that he was.
Yeah.
It was the biggest surprise. I'm like, no jail time, no charges?
No jail time?
And the other revelation, she flies the Starship.
Oh, my God. She's going to dethrone me as Johnny Cash on the Highwayman.
Scoot over, Johnny Cash.
There's a new Highwayman in town, and his name is Katy Perry. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. But so on the Ari Hoffman Show, we haven't really talked about the Katy Perry Blue Origin stuff in really much detail. I have a little bit of a rant, if you guys will indulge me for just a brief moment.
Please.
I understand that it's tone deaf, and I understand the backlash, especially like the Gayle King stuff where, you know, these people are literally from another planet and can't relate with us in any way. Where it starts to bristle my sensibilities a little bit is the conspiracy theory saying like the Blue Origin stuff is fake. And then also people being upset or having backlash towards like, oh, well, you know, they're not astronauts. They didn't actually go to space. They've done this twice before. And I wish that the folks that were twice as mad at this were half as mad when Shatner did.
As an insider to the space community.
Uh-huh.
Morning shows discuss this ad nauseum. I don't know if I brought it up ever here on this show. I collect space memorabilia.
Mm-hmm.
There are parts of Columbia and Challenger on my desk, feet away from us, prior to the...
I was about to say parts of Columbia and
prior
Challenger.
to the incidents.
There we go. Okay.
They're on my desk. And the space community has been real upset about all this, by and large, for a while. Because the allure to astronauts it's one of the few things, in my opinion, that Americans can all get behind. And this is not funny or fake anymore. This is just, I like astronauts. It's cool, and they're inspiring. And these people are not. They're cargo. These people are cargo.
No, it's like an amusement park ride. It's a really expensive amusement park ride. I was actually talking to somebody who works
and
for...
you don't call yourself a roller coaster operator.
I don't call myself a race car driver, and
I'm glad you don't, brother.
I'm closer to a race car driver than any of these people are to an astronaut.
Yes.
And I don't say I'm a race car driver, but I was talking to somebody locally not too long ago. I know you do. You actually race cars. I just race other people on the road. So I was talking to somebody from one of the space companies that shall remain nameless, but they just sent a bunch of celebrities into outer space. And they had mentioned to me that I said, okay, did Shatner actually go to space? And he just does this. You can't see it because it's radio. He just shakes his head back and forth like that. He goes, they were up there, but it's not really space.
They crossed the Kármán line, therefore, yes, space. But they're not astronauts.
No, of course not. I'm just saying, like, I feel like the outrage towards this particular Blue Origin mission is
because
disproportionate to
this one. They tried to
ones.
make it a thing. They tried to make it Katy Perry's an astronaut. Before it was like,
got it.
William Shatner goes to space. That's fine. Michael Strahan goes to space. Rich people go to space. Now they're saying all-female crew of astronauts, and that's where I think people are getting so pissed off.
Got it.
Upset.
Yeah, we didn't get the fun memes out of this one. We got the making fun of memes out of this one.
But Babylon Bee wrote a good one. Whee! I'm an astronaut, exclaims Katy Perry during ride on Disneyland Astro Orbiter.
Ah, very good.
Also, Astro Orbiter.
You brought her, you Astro Orbiter. I just met her.
That's very good.
Oh, you gotta give him that hot tune.
Oh, no.
Back to the fake news. Couple more from the
Astro Orbiter nearly killed her. No, that's not right. That's not right.
No.
That's bad. That's bad.
A couple more from the Babylon Bee. UK stabbing suspect pleads Muslim.
Oh, no!
I didn't.
Ari Hoffman approves.
As if there was any question. We'll let that. All right.
Let's sit.
People didn't like that one as much as I thought they would. We'll try this one from the Babylon Bee. Cain raises $1 million in crowdfunding donations after killing Abel.
Oh, yeah. Biblical. Good Friday. I like that. Very
perfect.
good.
Yep,
Easter Eve. Very good.
Yeah, making fun of children who killed people. All right. Well, I mean, I'm not. They are. You're the one laughing.
It's funny.
But that's all right. I was like, I'm like, is he in honor of WrestleMania? Is Zach doing like WWE jokes for me? Like Kane, famously brother to the Undertaker. Come on, man. It's a different guy. It's a different guy.
In reference to the caramel apple.
Yes, there you go. Nice. Thank you. Thank you.
A couple from the Hard Times opinion. If we're going to ignore years of medical research, we should at least make cigarettes healthy again.
Don't 4 out of 5 doctors recommend them?
I think 4 out of 5 at least admit drunk cigs don't count.
That is true.
Very good. Very good.
One more from the Hard Times. Vegan finds it harder to eat carrots once he's named them.
Oh no.
Now, Ari, you saw a real story, since we're doing a lot of real news on the fake news today, that Sound Transit is doing something funny. They're opening a merch shop. Huh?
Yeah.
They're going to have a merch guy.
Now, let me be totally transparent about this merch shop for a second. New York City had one, the MTA Transit store, and it was cool because you get cufflinks that are old subway tokens. You get train sets for the kids that are antique subways.
It's an iconic brand with deep-rooted history
There's
in the
a
city.
history to it, whatever. I get that Sound Transit is brand new, but you ain't going to get this stuff. You're not going to get tokens for sure because, one, nobody uses tokens, but two, nobody pays for Sound Transit.
I posed that question this morning. Can I buy the merchandise the same way I buy my Sound Transit tickets, which is I don't.
You just take it
Can
and
I
go.
Is it self-checkout merch?
Right. I was wondering that also, but I looked at what they have, and it looks like somebody just went to Vistaprint or something and just said, oh, yeah, we'll put it on this, we'll put it on that. Half of it doesn't even say Sound Transit on it.
Yeah, well, it's basically the MAGA hat of local liberals, but since you've looked at the store, we might have to play this with Mike.
Yeah, I like
or maybe
this. I
we'll
like
see.
this.
We'll see if Ari knows any of this stuff. But I want to play Price is Right with some of the prices of how much you think they're selling these things for. So we'll start with a T-shirt.
A T-shirt?
What do you think a T-shirt goes for?
At Sound Transit, I haven't actually looked at the prices, so I'm going to say $40.
Well, it depends. Mike?
I'm going to say 32.
Round numbers, so we'll just keep that. But yeah, closest without going over. So it's, well, you both went over. $30 for a downtown Redmond opening T-shirt, but only $25 for the map of the subway. But if you want a button-up shirt, $45.
Oh my God, I was right. I knew it'd be something like that.
Nice.
But how much is a baseball hat then?
Well, you tell me. We're playing prices right.
Okay, so if the shirt is 30 and 40, then that means the hat is probably 25-ish or something like that.
I gotta go 18.
You are right, Ari. $25.
$25
right
for
on
the
the money
hat.
for the hat.
Okay.
Wow.
Right on the money for the hat.
I am not
That
very
is
good
great.
at this.
We'll do one more just because I think this one's really dumb. What do you think for a dog collar?
A dog collar?
You brought her you dog collar. You brought her you dog collar.
Dog collar? She's not into that.
All right, so you're talking about a hat for a dog, but it's not a human.
No, it's a collar.
Huh? No, it's a hat for a dog. This is the comparison with the humans.
Okay, I was gonna say you might have a misunderstanding about what a dog collar is.
Mommy, what's a dog collar?
I was gonna say, but I understand what you're saying now. Thank you for the
okay, just for
clarification.
comparison, so let's say $20 for the dog collar.
$1.
Ari's cheating. Right on the money. $20 exactly.
Oh, it is $20. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
That you can get posters, you can get jigsaw puzzles, you can get water bottles, you can get a blanket for some dumb reason. And what a perfect gift for this spring.
Yes.
Mother's Day coming up. Get them a Sound Transit Shop gift card.
Wait, hang on. The gift card to buy the dumb stuff from Sound Transit.
Yes.
That's worse than socks or a sweater. In fact, I think the sweater's a better gift than that.
Of course. Well, what about a Sound Transit sweater?
How about no?
Also, sweater.
No.
Too much.
I mean,
too much.
I'd be expecting them to sell things people here in Seattle actually use. For example, hypodermic needles.
Somebody texted in this morning, said, do they sell foil in a lighter? And we got another text that said, no, the merch never shows up and it costs twice as much as you paid for it.
Oh, very good, very good. Are they selling hatchets? I hear those get used on there, yes.
Sound Transit branded hatchet.
There you go. Yeah, do that. Maybe mats, right? So when somebody throws you down the steps of the station, you got something to
I want a
land
seat
on?
cover so I can put a little old school sofa cover for my own.
Into it. It's like, don't threaten me with something actually useful that I could use on one of their vomit comet death tubes.
Vomit comet.
Nasty.
Oh, man.
Hey, or maybe like some
gas masks.
Gas mask,
Wait a second.
Narcan.
Zach, what do the shirts say on them?
They don't really say anything. They're like designs.
Just designs? Because
Yeah.
I would say you put something on the shirt that says something like I got stabbed on Sound Transit, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt.
There it is.
Right? You put something like that on there. I survived a trip on Sound Transit.
South Lake Union Transit.
Exactly.
Yes. See, that would actually sell. You put something
I
like that
would
in
buy
there.
one
I
of
think that would
those.
actually sell. If it's not a rolling homeless encampment, it's not Sound Transit.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
I mean, Sound Transit building tomorrow's excuses today.
Oh, I like that one. That's a winner. That's a winner.
Sound Transit, where addicts and criminals ride free. I mean, all these taglines we could use. Sound Transit, bringing you scenes of violence you didn't sign up for. We could do this all day. Hop on Sound Transit. Late trains, busted escalators, and a free street fight.
Nice.
Sound Transit, only Hitler's trains ran on time.
Oh, no!
Whoa,
Wait, we can go a different route with this.
Took a turn, unlike those trains.
If it's being done right, it's probably not run by Dal Constantine. Sound Transit.
That's
Just
what I
put
think
that
this
on
is
there.
all for. This is they got to find a way to pay that guy.
Oh yeah, the 600,000 or whatever it is. They owe us 445,000 because he said he wasn't going to take the
Just
full
remember to
600.
tip your merch guy.
Oh, crazy stuff. All right, thank you, Zach. Do appreciate it. Do not shop from Sound Transit. I'm sure I'm going to get an angry call from Transit Joe over that one. We got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.
Bye.
Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up at 5:45, your chance to win fantabulous prizes, including a $50 gift card and tickets to the Bremerton Air Show. But before we get to any of that, we usually don't get calls on our good news segment, but joining us now on the KVI studio line, we go to John in Marysville. John, how can I help you today?
Hi, John. Hi, Ari. So I just wanted to put in maybe potentially another perspective on Katy Perry's flight.
Sure.
I guess my question is, they did go above the Kármán line, which is the internationally recognized line for space, but to say that they didn't go to space, I feel like is very disingenuous, considering Alan Shepard, America's first astronaut, he also did a suborbital flight. His flight was about 15 minutes. So then if these people did not go to space, are we now going to revise history and say Alan Shepard is not our first astronaut?
Fair point. Very fair point. Let me ask you a question, because you seem to know more about this than I do. Let me ask you this for a second. Do you think we need to change it about how much time you spent in space, or you think we need to change it for where space actually starts and ends? Because Alan Shepard went back a few more times after that, right?
That is 100% true. And, that is actually debated whether, suborbital space is enough to be considered space or orbital space should be the new standard. But I feel like these flights are really, a testament to how far technology has gone. Blue Origin's goal is to put as many people up in space as possible. And I feel like even though they are celebrities, that is part of their mission. Launching a rocket is very expensive. And so, of course, only the elite and the rich are going to be able to afford it. Just like airplanes and cars, when those first came out, those were only for the rich and the elite until manufacturing and infrastructure was developed, where regular people can actually afford it. I think we're in the first steps of being able to do that. And unfortunately for now, it is a very expensive business. And, we're pushing forward to meet that dream, that goal. I just don't see how sending these people into space is really a negative thing, if not a testament to how far technology has come and a homage to our predecessors who were in this industry before us.
You know what I think it is, John? You raised some great points, really legit points that I haven't heard from anybody else on the topic yet. These are great, great points. We want to get to a place where going to space is like driving on the freeway. Everybody's done it before. That's the point we want to get to. There's colonies on the moon. There's colonies on Mars. We have warp speed, and we can go wherever it is. Right now, I think it may be a PR thing. So when you send people to space, like William Shatner, you may go, well, he's a celebrity, but it's kind of like a lifetime of reward. So maybe that played a little better than Katy Perry. I think a lot of people right now think of the people going to space as the astronauts who do the work, to do the science, to go to the space station, or to expand the test pilots, you might say. So I think the problem with the celebrity flights is now it's coming off as just a toy for the rich, as opposed to what are we accomplishing by this, because there's no milestone they're hitting. Like, for example, if you said, we're sending them to the International Space Station and bringing them back, you say we want to show that this is something the average person can do with no training. That's where we want to get to. I think the problem is when you do the suborbital flights for the wealthy, I think you're making a great point. At first, the only people who could afford cars were the wealthy as well. But I think it may be a marketing problem at this point. Would you agree?
I don't disagree with you. And the biggest thing is, the first transatlantic flight happened. A few years later, the first passenger plane, first transatlantic flight happened. Just because that happened doesn't mean those passengers are really taking away from the original accomplishment. I think it's just a view or a demonstration of our accomplishment to be able to technologically advance, to be able to do these types of things. And I think, Blue Origin as a company is at the very first stage of making that long journey into advancing technology and hopefully getting more people, common everyday people, into space.
John, you should work for the company. I think you should do that. I will say, I think it's the Katy Perry aspect. It was just so memeable, and the virtue signaling about it. I think that was the biggest problem. I don't think anybody cares about Jeff Bezos' wife going to space. I don't. That makes sense to me. I think it was just the Katy Perry thing. But yeah, excellent points, John. I appreciate the call. I really appreciate your perspective. I'm going to look at this a little differently now.
Sounds good. Also, can I put one more thing in?
Sure, go ahead.
Blue Origin also flew Ed Dwight, who was essentially a astronaut potential who never made it to space, and Blue Origin also flew him to space, which is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him, making his dream come true. So
absolutely. I'll put this out here, John. I mean, I don't know who's listening to the segment, but I'll put this out here. If there was space for a radio show host who's skeptical of this, who could say, hey, you know what? I'm one of the critics of these space flights for the wealthy. I'd go up there and then I'd come back down. We've done this with a few other things before, right? In fact, we've been talking about possibly Renton Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, one of my sponsors, giving me an electric car to try and convert me over from my gas guzzling, sports car over to something like that. So I'll just put it out there, John. I'm happy to be the guinea pig for this.
Sounds great.
All right, buddy. Appreciate the call. Appreciate the perspective. Appreciate you listening. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757.
So to kind of clarify my position, because again, during the last segment, during Fake News Friday, I was the one that kind of ranted about it. And I think even listening back to it now, it's my perspective is crystallized a bit more. I'm not mad about Blue Origin. I don't even think that that's a bad model. If celebrities want to burn millions and millions of dollars to have that experience, that's fine, because I think normalizing this touristy type of thing is another arm of innovation, in addition to what Elon Musk is doing with SpaceX. I think it's because I've seen a lot of the internet discourse comparing the two, and I think there's overlap, but they're not doing the same thing.
Yes.
My issue with the entirety of this Katy Perry thing is, one, she's tone deaf. Gayle King is completely tone deaf as well. Yes. And it's the big virtue signal about it. It's like, oh man, we're the first all-female crew to go to space. We're pioneers. We're inspiring young women. It's like you're inspiring young women to what? Hopefully they become either TV stars or pop musicians to be able to afford to do this. This doesn't do anything to move the needle on STEM or NASA or females getting into aeronautics or anything like that. That's what my problem is.
So this isn't a sexist thing, but I think that when Bill Shatner went up there, and it's Captain Kirk, and everybody knows it's Captain Kirk, and they made a big deal about it, and he came down how grateful he was. Remember that? It was the thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This is amazing. This is, I've done my whole life pretending to do this. Now I'm actually doing it. I think that was a more effective thing than anything else. And think about this also. Rockets blow up all the time. If you can make it like it's just getting in your car where you turn on the engine, you're not worried about it blowing up unless you're in the mafia or something, I think that is a huge achievement. And I actually credit Blue Origin for that, because that is a huge deal that you can send these things up with regularity. Look, we had Challenger explode. And by then, space travel was, let's have all the kids in America watch this lady teacher go into space. And what happened? The thing blew up, and then they didn't show them live anymore after that. But it becomes so routine by then. A big theme of Apollo 13, the movie, I wasn't there, I wasn't alive at the time, was, well, this is so routine at this point going to the moon, nothing's going to go wrong. And then all of a sudden, everything goes wrong, and that's when everybody cared about the thing. We don't want to diminish space travel. I think it's a matter of, I think Katy Perry is really what got under everybody's skin with this whole thing and the absolute memeability of it. And you're right. You have Elon Musk doing one thing. You have Blue Origin and Jeff Bezos doing something else. But where's NASA? We haven't heard from NASA, and how NASA stranded people in space and had no way to get them back.
I'm pretty sure we defunded NASA.
Right, we did that too. But if we turn it over to private industry, look how much better they're doing. The government didn't say we're going to build cars. The government didn't say we're going to build shit after the exploration stuff where the government's paying to send people out to go explore things in Spain and such. With Christopher Columbus, it was, okay, well, we have shipbuilders who build ships. So, yeah, that's a very, very important point. I'm very glad for that phone call, by the way. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from Steve in Tacoma. Steve, what's up, man?
Hey, Ari, Ari, how you doing, my man?
It's a sunny, beautiful day, and it looks like spring might actually be here. And then I hear it's going to rain over the weekend. What's on your mind, my friend?
Yeah, well, I'm going to barbecue when I get home, so a big fat ribeye steak. But
yes.
I don't see these little climate warriors that went up on Blue Origin talking about the massive footprint they just put into the atmosphere.
Yeah, well, that's something else that's interesting because what does Jeff Bezos name the stadium, by the way? Jeff Bezos names it Climate Pledge Arena, and they're the ones going up there. So maybe they should be focusing on how can we do this energy efficiently or something. Now, I understand we need some science to get us up there in the first place, and maybe one day it'll be fuel efficient, but we don't have dilithium crystals yet, and I've seen how they mine those dilithium crystals, and that is not good for the environment. I'm glad that it took in the 24th century we could finally recrystallize those suckers, but I saw what they do on Rura Pente in that Star Trek VI movie, my friend.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, the ones that are going up, putting satellites and stuff like that, I get it. But for entertainment, and they're all climate warriors, you know, it's just virtue signaling.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Steve, appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. By the way, speaking of transportation, back here on Earth, do you know that Washington qualified as one of the 10 most dangerous states in the U.S. when it comes to public transit, according to a new study? Cairo 7 had it and said between 2021 and 2023, Washington had 97 reported violent incidents, including 5 fatalities and 95 injuries. The study analyzed violent incidents, including bombings, robberies, non-physical assaults on workers across all states through data from the U.S. Department of Transportation. Mike, I'm missing something here. I remember like 1 or 2 fatalities. I don't remember 5. I got to go back and double check. Are there ones we didn't know about? Are they reported somewhere else? Because that's my question about that. Yeah. So when they say the transportation here is perfectly safe, this is why we still don't see Dale Constantine riding the train. When we come back, my friends, so much more to discuss. We're going to have Todd Herman joining us for our daily Thoughtcast, and we're also going to have Five for Fighting join us about a brand new song. They put out a new version of Superman. We'll give you all details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.